Yeah.
You want the good news?
It's not? Good. Left side of this building right here.
Hey guys, welcome back. If you've watched any of my reviews in the past, you know I review quite a few Arcturus airsoft guns. They do a generally really good job on all their construction, their quality, and their range and consistency and accuracy out of their guns are fantastic. So, it was no surprise when the Arcturus starter package showed up, and it performed really well. Let's check this out today. Arcturus reached out a little over a month ago and asked if I wanted to check out the new starter package they're producing. Interestingly, it comes with just about everything you need to get out on the field and start playing, which is really, really neat. A lot of companies are starting to cut back on that, where they don't include a battery or this or that. This is usually a gun, a magazine, and if you're lucky, a cleaning rod and a manual, but those are niceties nowadays. As of filming this review, early 2024, this airsoft package retails in the low 200s, which I think is a fantastic price point. It comes with just about everything you need. Let's go over that right now in a super speed run because it includes a lot. A single high-capacity magazine, a 2,000 milliamp hour lithium-ion battery, and a basic trickle charger and cable to charge it. This will also charge your lithium polymer batteries as well. Instructions for how to use the charger. Dean's to Tamiya adapter just in case you need it, but you don't since the battery it comes with a Dean's connector already. Disassembly tool, patch, fridge magnet. Little sheet showing that they actually tested the gun and it shoots a really pretty decent FPS actually. Instruction manual, a decent long cleaning rod, and a spare spring if you want to run the gun at an indoor FPS. Additionally, the gun does come with your front and rear flip-up sights. They are separate when you get the gun, so you do have to install them, and it does come with the Allen keys necessary to do that. Dang, okay. Comes with a lot of stuff. Got that out of the way real quick. Let's start with the back of the gun and move our way forward. The stock works as your battery compartment for this gun. The back of it is rubberized, which is rather nice. Got a nice ribbing texture to it, grips your shoulder reasonably well, and it does retract forward and backward. It also has a metal insert here for your quick detach sling point, which is fantastic as well. The battery compartment can be accessed by rotating the small dial on the back and pulling the back cap just a little down and off. Thankfully it is captured in the stock so it doesn't fall right off. So many other companies do that where you just rip it right off. There's no retention pin and those get lost all the time. I find them on the local field without fail almost every game. So I'm so thankful for this. The battery compartment is pretty generous. You can fit the included 2,000 milliamp hour lithium ion battery in there without a problem, and it does have a great quality Dean's connector already installed. The quick chain spring is also pretty easy to access. Not something I would do on the field per se, but perhaps in the safe or staging area. I've pre-loosened the castle nut on the buffer tube. We can start by unscrewing that and pulling the back plate out just a little bit. From there, we can unscrew the entire buffer tube. Once the buffer tube is totally unscrewed, we can pull the assembly off. From here, we'll have access to the spring guide screw. Easier to use a flathead to take that out. And from here, we can simply twist and remove the spring guide and swap our spring out. Moving up the gun a little bit, you do have a back cap on the receiver between the buffer tube and the receiver for the sling plate. You can attach your sling there if you don't have a quick detach point that you can put on the stock, or you can do both. What actually caught my attention first when I pulled this gun out of the box was the pistol grip. Strangely enough. The older models of Arcturus guns had a pretty flat, plain, slightly ribbed texture on the grips. This one is actually stippled, which is really nice. It grips the hand well enough. It's got a nice rough texture to it. You do have a functional bolt catch here, so if you want to pull your charging handle back, your fake bolt goes back and it stays back. You can push the paddle release on the left side and it'll drop your fake bolt. Underneath your fake bolt is your hop-up adjustment, just like pretty much every other M4 out there. This is a rotary style hop-up, so down for more hop and up for less hop. The sights included on this gun are actually pretty awesome. They're spring-loaded, very heavily spring-loaded, I will add. Flip up. What's interesting is when they are down, there's a notch up front and a 2-notch on the back. In theory, you can kind of line these up and use them as sights even when they're down, but in practice, they really don't work that well. They're so low that no matter what, you just can't get low enough to really use them effectively. They're not terribly comfortable. And if you have goggles or a mask on, there's no way you can use those little sights. So the realistic way, and honestly the only way to use these sights, is to use them as intended when flipped up. The rear sight is adjustable for windage and elevation and has 2 peep apertures, large and small. I like to stick with the large one. It's easier to acquire your targets. And the front sight is adjustable only for elevation. Something to keep in mind when purchasing this gun, it is mostly polymer. It's pretty lightweight, very easy to manage, so not a whole lot of strain on the field when you're using it. The exceptions to the polymer rule being the metal buffer tube and metal outer barrel, and some inserts in the receiver to make it a little more rigid. The rail system, polymer as well, is really, really stiff. No creak, no wobble, well placed, and it is indexed to the receiver via little fins on either side of it here. So it's not going to rotate or spin off when you're using it on the field. The rail system is compatible with M-LOKs. If you got any components like that, vertical grip, rail covers, hand stop, anything like that, they'll work just fine. And it does have a full-length pick rail along the receiver and the rail that line up very nicely. You also have some pick rails on the front at the 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and 6 o'clock position at the very front of the rail. Additionally, if you do want to install a suppressor, tracer, or anything like that, the 14mm negative threads are underneath the plastic orange flash hider. This one does not come with a metal flash hider, unfortunately. I know a lot of the Arcturus guns in the past have. This one unfortunately does not, so you'll have to grab one of those aftermarket if you want to remove the orange tip. The internals of the Airsoft gun include the gearbox, hop-up and barrel, and the motor. The pistol grip uses metal inserts for the screw holes, which is fantastic. If the screws threaded right into the pistol grip, into the plastic, those tend to strip out and not last quite as long, so metal inserts are a definite plus. The motor is fairly generic, not a torque motor. I'd say a pretty basic motor with enough torque to get you by for the 2 included springs. And it does have a D-type pinion. The barrel is pretty short. It's about 245 millimeters to my ruler, so not a whole lot of length there, but it's still plenty accurate and gets reasonably good groupings. It is a 6.02 barrel and it is made of nice hard steel. In addition, there is a spring on the front to press the hop-up and barrel against the gearbox, providing a pretty good and consistent seal. The hop-up chamber itself is a rotary chamber, and it does have a really, 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 really light clicking and detent to it, but it's only when you're decreasing the hop-up from the highest point. If I'm increasing the hop-up, it's a pretty smooth rotation. You can kind of hear the clicking there. Arcturus switched from the single mound to the dual fin hop-up bucking design. And there it is at full hop there, and that was just enough, just barely enough to hop 0.32 gram BBs at a pretty reasonable spin. The 2 included springs are not irregular pitch, but they are linear, so they're consistent coiling throughout the entire spring. The spring guide is pretty basic. It does have a plastic shaft with a metal fin base and a washer as well. The gun does use the hybrid gearbox as printed on the side here. There are extrusions on the front and the back of the cylinder window, which is fantastic, and you can see it is radiused a little bit on the front as well as the back of the cylinder window. The gearbox does have a basic inline MOSFET. I've used these on quite a few guns, have never had issues with them, so they are actually really, really great MOSFETs. They don't have any programming. They are just simply there to protect your trigger switch. On the left side of the gearbox is a small port to access your anti-reversal latch. You can trip that, decycle your gearbox, then remove your quick change spring. The cylinder compression is excellent. Arcturus has always done a phenomenal job with compression in the cylinder, and this is no exception. Your nozzle is really basic, no O-ring, but it gets an excellent seal with the cylinder head. No complaints here whatsoever. It's actually rather tight, which is interesting. So you have a pretty, or actually really stiff spring on the tappet plate, which helps make up for that. You do get a ported cylinder here. It's just enough for that 245 millimeter barrel, so just what you need. The cylinder head is really basic, polymer, single O-ring, and a rubber damper on the back. And it seals really well with the cylinder. The cylinder head is polymer, single O-ring, and it does have bearings. in the back. You can hear them jiggle around in there. So those are definitely good. The piston is fantastic. Speed cuts on the sides. Steel tooth rack with the second to last tooth completely removed. The angle of engagement on the teeth is pretty good. I might back it up just a hair with the servo pad, but as is, I think it's all right out of the box. The anti-reversal latch is a little bit different than most. It's not one piece, but I have seen this design before. It's been a while though. It uses a plastic spacer, a single metal piece for the AR latch itself, and a spring, and it sits on a post inside of the gearbox. This gearbox does use the microswitch design, so similar to older systems, but the gearbox is a little bit different. These newer ones can actually accept drop-in MOSFETs like Perun, Gate Titans, Gate Asters, and so forth, which is really cool. So if I want, I've got a spare pair and hybrid here. I might just drop that in later on. All right, let's check this shimming quality. You can see I've screwed the gearbox back together here. As far as gear movement, the sector gear is nice and tight, not too tight to the point where it doesn't move, but it's just shimmed right as it should be. The spur gear, I can't get it really to move back and forth, so I might loosen that up just a hair. But on bearings, sometimes that can be all right. And same with the bevel gear. It's about as the sector gear is as far as how little play it has. So everything has as little play as you want and no more than you'd want. It's actually pretty good. The spur gear is the only one I might adjust just a hair, but I think it might be all right. The sector and spur are pretty close. I might be able to get them a hair closer, but out of the box, I'm okay with their spacing. The bevel and spur look to be pretty good. I think they're about in the same condition. I'd say the shimming is actually really good on this. It doesn't feel as smooth as I would like spinning them. I'm probably going to put that on the spur gear being maybe a hair too tight, but really this is just fine. Out of the box, this is actually really good shimming. To test this gun out, I took it out to Nighthawk Airsoft in Ford, Washington, my local, and I say local because I'm over in Idaho, so Ford isn't the closest place in the world. It's the closest good field to me. They are a fantastic field if you're in the area. Highly recommend checking them out. We've had games of 200 or 300 players pretty regularly, very often, which is so much fun. So make it out to Nighthawk Airsoft. You guys will have a blast out there. I used the included 11.1 volt lithium ion battery, which is a 2000 milliamp, so it lasted all day without a problem. I'm not a BB hose by any means. I don't just empty mag after people. I'm reasonably conservative with my ammo, so I did put a few thousand rounds through it, which this battery lasted without a problem. I used the included charger to charge the battery beforehand, and as advertised, it takes roughly an hour, maybe a little bit more than that, so it is a basic trickle charger. It's not your super speedy fast charger, but it is lithium polymer and lithium ion safe. So it will balance it and it will charge it as intended, and it won't overcharge your battery, which is fantastic. To my chrono readings, the gun shot about 400 FPS with a 2 and right at that 360 mark with a 0.25, which is what I showed in the beginning of the video. So that's perfect for your outdoor field limits. The included spring, I felt shot a little bit hot, unfortunately, especially for indoor. Usually most indoor fields are between like 1 joule and 350 feet per second, which ends up being about 325 to 350. I found that with a 2.5, this shot about 325, so you're probably looking at about 360 to 370 with a 2. So not a massive difference between the field spring and the indoor spring. You might need to break both these springs in a little bit too. If you put 1,000, 2,000 rounds through these, they should settle a little bit and drop off maybe 5 or 10 FPS, give or take. And that should bring both of these to kind of that expected field limit, whether it be indoor or outdoor. For testing, I ran this gun with 0.32 gram BBs, which is my standard weight to test pretty much every airsoft gun with. Most airsoft guns, they will either have trouble spinning that or just barely have enough hop up to spin that. This was kind of on the upper end of what this gun could handle, but it still had fantastic range, and I like having that little bit of extra hop at the end of the BB travel, so this could do that without an issue. For range and accuracy, what I saw out of this gun is still fantastic. It very much holds up to other Arcturus guns that are similar, if not even more expensive than this. I was probably hitting about 160 to 180 feet, somewhere in there, with a .32 gram BB, with it hopping a little bit at the end of the BB travel. So I was really able to reach out and touch people with this gun, especially compared to other high-end guns that are rather expensive and upgraded that are on the field. This was able to hold its own without a problem. My final thoughts on the Arcturus starter package. When I started Airsoft quite a while ago, I was in my early teens. This is an Airsoft gun I wish was on the market. It basically solves every problem that I had starting out, getting a decent charger, a decent battery, and the gun that could perform out of the box without having to do any work to it. I wish these had been around 15 plus years ago. I think they'd have changed the Airsoft game then and then some. And nowadays, I think they're still doing that, where they're introducing a fantastic starter package for a good price with everything you need but iPro and BBs. So I highly suggest these. I'm going to give this a 10 out of 10. There are not a lot of Airsoft guns, let alone Airsoft kind of packages like this, that I'd recommend and give a 10 out of 10 to. There's nothing wrong with these. They're great. They perform out of the box, and they've got about everything you need to get going. So thanks to Arcturus for sending this out. It's a lot of fun running these. I always love working with you guys. You make great guns. It's always a pleasure. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Additionally,